Welcome. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the March 4th Mayor's Bicycle Advisory Council meeting. I just want to get us started. We're going to do introductions first. Just very quickly, Gia Biaggi, our new commissioner, unfortunately is traveling to D.C. today. She's there with the mayor and was unfortunately unable to be here with us today, but she sends her regrets. So first of all, I'm Sean Wydell with the Chicago Department of Transportation.
And we'll be passing around the microphone so everyone can introduce themselves. I'm Amanda Woodall from Chicago Department of Transportation.
I'm Melanie Eckner, and I'm the Far North Side Community Rep.
I'm John Greenfield from Streets Blog.
Elihu Blanks from the Southeast Side Community Representative.
Tom Renault with Free Bikes for Kids.
Jacob Peters, North Side Representative.
Romina Castillo, I'm part of the Vision Zero team.
Whitney Warner, Vision Zero.
Sid Shaw, part of the Vision Zero team.
Emmy Williams, CDOT Safe Ambassadors.
Chris Zambori, CDOT Safe Ambassadors.
John O'Neill, CDOT Division of Traffic Safety.
Caitlin Goodspeed, CMAP.
Jen Maddox, CMAP.
Alan Mellis, Just in Time.
Leah Ruth Jamalo with Free Bikes for Kids.
Devin Johnson with Divvy.
Saiba Borisov from Divvy.
Johnson A. Johnson from Divvy.
Courtney Kashima with Muse Community Design.
Nina Inamudia with Muse Community Design.
Peter Taylor, Friends of the Major Taylor Trail.
Bob Castigar from the 39th Ward.
I'm just Chris Ridgway. I'm a community member.
Matthew Sharon with Working Bikes.
Allison Porton with the Vision Zero team.
Mauricio Garcia from Lurie Children's Hospital.
Ruth Rosas with Lurie Children's Hospital.
Alex Perez with Active Trends.
Bill Garcia from City Bureau.
Mark Roshan, Department of Planning and Development, Special Service Area Unit.
Susie Donnelly, Chicago Family Biking in Kittico, Mass.
Christina Whitehouse, Bike Lane Uprising.
Mike Claffey from CDOT.
Chuck Billows, City of Chicago Department of Finance, Parking Enforcement.
Jeremy Glover, Metropolitan Planning Council.
Margarita Reina, Chicago Department of Public Health.
Garth Katner, Westtown Bikes.
Jim Merrill, Active Transportation Alliance.
Brendan Daly, Chicago Park District.
Terry Warman, AARP.
Nick Blumberg, WTTW.
Lawrence Johnson, pedestrian with Vision Zero.
Mary Vishnevsky, Chicago Tribune.
Sure. Ben Kolak, documentarian.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. Actually, as we were doing introductions too, it also I just realized that I don't think we ever announced it publicly that we've changed the name of the Bicycling Ambassadors. They've been called the Bicycling Ambassadors since they started in 2005. We've actually, because they're actually working on Vision Zero and a lot broader scope of educational efforts around pedestrian activity, around people walking, biking, and Vision Zero, we've changed the name of the organization. Changed the name of the program. It's now the Safe Ambassadors, which is Streets Are for Everybody. We just did that a couple months ago and forgot to announce it. So you're the first to hear. We thought that was really better reflects what we're trying to do with the ambassador program. So you're the first to hear that publicly. So thank you all for coming today. We appreciate it. First up, we're going to actually started this process last year where we've asked our community reps to come in and talk about changes that they're seeing in the areas. Yes, Amanda. Oh.
Okay. I'll also introduce myself.
Oh, that's
Sean.
I'm sorry, Dave.
Unless you want to introduce me.
This is Dave Smith.
And now,
Dave Smith.
David Smith, CDOT. Thanks everyone for being here. Just quickly wanted to talk about fatality updates. That's something that we've been doing over the last couple of years at the beginning of the meetings. And so first I would just want to acknowledge and I think several of you have probably had heard that a person who was biking over the weekend was killed in Garfield Park. It happened Saturday just after midnight. There's not a whole lot that is known about the details of the crash at this point. The person was crossing the street and was hit by a driver who kept going. It was a hit and run crash, and I believe that the police released a photo of the image of the car, but it's still very much under investigation. I talked with the Chicago Police Department today to just try and get any more information, and it's something that's still under investigation. This happened on Lake Street around the Garfield Park Conservatory. So Lake Street, just west of here, is a high crash corridor in our Vision Zero plan, and Garfield Park is a high crash area within the Vision Zero plan. Just want to say that ultimately, everything that we're talking about here is all about building a culture around traffic safety, which is what we've said in the Vision Zero plan, and it's really about changing the culture of how we move around our city. And we have to approach changing the culture at kind of all levels, citywide, which is what we talk about in our Vision Zero plan, but also at the community level. Every community has a different culture, a unique culture around transportation and mobility, and that's what we're trying to understand and to get at and to build partnerships with through projects like our Vision Zero West Side plan. We're working on releasing our Vision Zero Downtown plan, which should be happening this year, and then we'll be this summer starting on Vision Zero South Side in Washington Park in Englewood and West Englewood, and then working towards Vision Zero Northwest Side as well. And even finer grain than each community, I think that every street has its own culture as well. And that has a lot to do with, it has more to do with just transportation and just what the street looks like, but it has a lot to do with things like land use and zoning and all sorts of characteristics around a street that crosses multiple agencies and really requires strong partnerships between the city and community organizations that are on the ground within the neighborhood. So that's really what we're hoping to build through this whole process, through these MBAC meetings, through all of our Vision Zero efforts. And I know that's something that our commissioner feels very strongly about, and I think we'll be able to speak to at our next meeting. But that's something that I think we've done a much better job of that over the last couple of years, but we need to do more, and it's something that we're really committed to. And again, just look forward to working with everyone here and those who couldn't be here, and so we appreciate the time. Yeah, so something that we've talked about going forward, we're going to, in the past we've had a map and some information around fatal crashes. We want to provide that information. We're also kind of brainstorming on other ways that we can change the fatality update, and we'll have handouts on that stuff going forward, and happy to talk with folks after the meeting today. We'll stick around afterwards, and if anybody has any ideas or wants to talk about the fatality updates going forward, we're happy to take in ideas and have a conversation about it. So with that, I think we have a new MBAC rep as well. I don't know if you want. Do you want to say anything?
I'm Elahi from the southeast side of Chicago. I'll be talking to you later on this year. All right. Okay.
Cool. Thanks. Welcome. I think next up then we have Jake, and I can't get down there. So
thank you. So I'm Jacob Peters. I'm the MBAC community representative for the North region, and I'm going to try and stand here because then I won't block anybody. So I gave last year a presentation about sort of my community area, that the region that it covers, and highlighted some goals and some things about that area. Today, do I have a clicker for this thing? There we go. This time I'm going to talk about a specific project as well as some updates on how my goals have been going or not going, that kind of thing. So there we go. So the goals that I had were to have at least one monthly meeting with a ward representative from one of the 15 wards that are in the community in the MBAC region that I represent. And it went okay if phone meetings count. It's difficult once a month to coordinate your schedules with aldermen who are constantly doing a whole bunch of other stuff. It's easiest to meet them at a meeting, a community meeting, and be like, hey, that thing that I called about, do we have any updates? So I'm going to sort of see some other strategies that I can use in order to improve on that. CDOT has helped in terms of saying, yeah, just CC me on any email that you're sending about coordinating a meeting, because that tends to make somebody respond because they recognize somebody who's on the email thread. So that's helpful. I also wanted to identify an alder who had a neighborhood where we could do something similar to what the Edgewater Bike Network plan was. Because of not being able to meet with a lot with the 12 that I had ambitiously aimed to meet up with, there are 3 potential neighborhoods that I'm hopeful we can move a little bit forward on. Dave Smith has also explained how those conversations are happening at CDOT as well with aldermen, and it's also just, as much as I would love for there to be a community meeting about bike network up in Albany Park, the one that they're sort of going forth with in Belmont Cragen is a great location to start in terms of equity in places where there isn't a ton of biking, but there's huge potential in terms of neighborhood routes that are already fairly easy to get around to because the street grid is fairly intact. And then the Loop Vision Zero plan, hey, that's kind of a network plan when we talk about how the Loop already has quite a few connections, and it's really about improving those little gaps that exist and making the downtown network more robust. So my last goal was to get my network issues map, which is this sort of map that isn't public yet. That is, I've gotten community reps to put in places across the city where there are gaps in our existing network or where an intersection is really dicey, even though the infrastructure leading up to the intersection is nice. And I am hoping to get more people to contribute on that. So consider this a thread bump to you guys. I know the north side has a ton of stuff already, but the south side LU will get together and figure out how we can identify a few more of those gaps and that kind of stuff. I'm trying to figure out where I'm supposed to aim this. Oh, there we go. So we're doing a sort of project overview this year in terms of the community region updates. So my project is the new protected bike lanes on Milwaukee between California and Western. So the basic goal of them is to improve the last section of the high crash corridor that has not seen improvements since the high crash corridor and Vision Zero were identified. And that's going to, here, see, I made animations, which was not smart if you don't know how, there we go, which is connecting 2 areas that have seen the sort of quick response updates in terms of, bollards, dashed bike lanes, that kind of stuff. Not ideal things, but improvements. And this area that we're talking about actually has the opportunity for more because it's wide enough that we can have real conversations about eliminating parking on one side of the street and getting benefits. Whereas in some of those narrower corridors, even if you eliminated parking from one side of the street, you wouldn't actually be able to get a protected bike lane. You'd be able to maybe get regular bike lanes that don't even have a buffer, and that can be just as bad as there are debates, we'll just say it that way. Another goal would be to create, improve, well, there are two different talking points. The one at the top is saying that once we figure out something that we can do here in the wider portions of the Milwaukee corridor further north, we can test out those kinds of applications. So making some progress here is something that we can duplicate further north if we start having the same problems up there that we've had here in terms of a high crash corridor. Because we never want to think that, oh, this high crash corridor is the only one that will exist in perpetuity. The same things that cause this to be a high crash corridor could easily lead to this area being a high crash corridor in the next 5 years. And that's just, that can be duplicated on Archer, on places all across the city. So it's not just about duplicating it here, it's about duplicating it everywhere across the city. The other thing is east-west connectivity. There are quite a few nice routes, like Palmer coming through here and Webster coming over in this direction, that get cut off by the weirdness of the grid and how it sort of morphs around Milwaukee. And having a protected bike lane that is really protected and comfortable could be a way of people getting onto that route and connecting what are otherwise two legs that I'd love to use to get to Milwaukee, but I don't really want to cross Milwaukee to get between them. And I'll speed up because I'm just being overly verbose right now. Thank you. Oh, and back one. There we go. Oh, no, I guess back to that we were on the right one. So numbers and narratives. This is the only remaining portion of the Milwaukee high crash corridor that has not had improvements after the high crash corridor framework plan was released. So this is an obvious one to do. I already talked about the widest highway length. It's also the second highest stretch for non-intersection related crashes in the city of in the community area, which means that it's really an ideal place to do a protected bike lane, because the kinds of conflicts that are happening on this corridor are not necessarily intersection improvements as much as they are making sure that you're not getting doored, somebody's not veering into your lane, all the things that cars do in between the intersections where they make turns. Next one. Thank you. So community engagement, the alderman has been extremely helpful in terms of going out and talking to the community, in terms of talking to businesses. CDOT has been part of that. I offered to walk in and be part of that, and that kind of might not have been the best thing to do. So I took what they had gotten in terms of baseline feedback, and I followed up with businesses that I knew along the corridor in a real chill and not imposing way to say, like, what are your biggest concerns and how could those be allayed? And one of the things that well, while also explaining that some parking is going to be eliminated because the improvement of safety is more improvement than the false fear that you will lose business from losing parking, because there are all of these studies over here that show that the opposite is true. If you get rid of parking in order to make a street safer for walking and biking, more of the people who are walking and biking are going to come there and spend more money, and it's going to offset it. And in some cases, it's going to drastically increase the amount of spending on your block. So safety before everything else, but also the everything else might be a little bit over bloated. So then the follow-up was a discussion with ward staff about an upcoming public meeting that they're having and how they might reform a transportation advisory committee that had existed in the first ward, but had sort of fallen by the wayside as people like myself, who had been on that transportation committee, had moved out of the ward and no longer could serve in that role of advising the first ward about issues that they were experiencing. So benefits and burdens of the project. Benefits: improve safety for all road users, including pedestrians and drivers, because when you make improvements, oh, and this one actually, I did not end up putting that chart on here because I realized that too many charts is a bad thing. All road users, including pedestrians and drivers, see improvements when you have road diets that make bike safety improvements, because drivers swerve to avoid clashes with cyclists. And sometimes when they do those swerves, they go into somebody who's speeding in the opposite direction because you're on an over-wide road, and there are all these different reasons that streets become safer when we're all taking our time, looking for each other, and we have a little bit of space to do that. reduced dooring on the highest door-to-door dooring corridor on the northwest side, which is shown right here, and that Milwaukee has the highest rate of dooring. And better organizing both bus and bike conflicts, which is a big issue along this corridor because of the Milwaukee bus, and making sure that our loading zones for goods and passengers are better organized. It's a real opportunity that we have if we're going to be talking about rededicating curb space to create places where during the day somebody can pick up and unload goods for their hardware store, and then when the hardware store really doesn't need goods to be delivered at 8 o'clock, but the bar right down the street is bumping, maybe that could be a rideshare pickup and drop-off point, because we've already had conversations with Lyft and Uber about them geofencing areas and saying, if you're in this area, the only place to pick up is right here. And if we do those kinds of things, we can eliminate a lot of the, I got doored because somebody I didn't have a space in order to safely pull over and unload their passenger, which is a concern for people who are getting picked up and dropped off in rideshare. But the solution to that isn't, I'll just pull into the bike lane and open my door without looking, which happens all the time. And that comes back to highest dooring corridor. So burdens are reduced parking, the inability for cars to use bike lanes as dangerous right side passing lanes. Sorry, I'm being a little bit snarky in here because I don't think there are any burdens from this project. Even if we talk about either gentrification or issues of rent increases, we're not, by having a safer 1 mile corridor, you're not going to create, oh, suddenly twice as many people want to live on this corridor. That is already happening on this section of Milwaukee, and you can look at what I paid in rent 5 years ago versus what I'm paying in rent now as direct proof. A doubling in rent happens when there's already out of control demand. So next one. Oh, sorry, that was probably both of us trying to write back one more. So what the recommendations that I had were in my role as community rep, where I'm supposed to listen to the needs of all users, especially the most vulnerable, and advocate for an ambitious plan, not just the easiest one to get done. We need to prioritize loading zones that are during the day and drop-off zones that are during the evening. It's the one thing that I heard from every business that I talked to. They were concerned not about having a place to freely pick up and drop off things all day long, but at certain peak points. And those peak points didn't all line up with one another. So there's some opportunities there. Wherever we can find a way to do this, creating floating bike lanes like our floating bus stops, whether that's through bus stop consolidation and creating places where there aren't conflicts between the bus merging in and bikes trying not to be in blind spots, that would be extremely helpful. And documentation of retail performance from across the city. If we have anything that has shown that from a study, I mean, we've done a series of bike lanes across the city where we've eliminated parking, and we probably have the data in order to say, look, across all of these different corridors, there has not been a drastic reduction in spending because we've made the street safer. So those are my recommendations. And the last thing is a call to action. Come to the Milwaukee Protected Bike Lane meeting whenever it's announced. Contact your alderman, whether you live on the corridor or not. If you care about making sure that our streets are safe, contact your alderman. Find out what's stopping them from doing something and get them on board. Because if we don't have a coalition across the city, we're not just not going to have this on Milwaukee where there's already a ton of demand for cycling. We're not going to have this in places where people do not bike because they're scared, and because I'm recorded, I'm not going to say the word, scared out of their mind. It's contact your alderman. Just do it. Let them know that the status quo is not acceptable. And if you have interest in creating replicating the Edgewater Neighborhood Bike Network in your community or ward, contact me, get a hold of me, and maybe we can jointly go to a alderman and say, hey, we offer to organize a general idea session about this. We just want to not do it behind your back, because you can help me, and if more people help me, then I'm actually not just listening to people, I'm activating people doing things. So yeah, that's how we'll build coalitions beyond ward boundaries. I'm done. Sorry.
I think we have time for one or two questions.
Yeah, Alan?
I'm just curious. Well, I guess I have a favor. If you figure out how to measure retail performance, I'd love to hear about it, because there are a lot of other programs that could do that. We've attempted to ask the Secretary of State for sales tax revenue. Now, we're not concerned about individual stores, how much they're giving, but for a block. So maybe with this effort, it could be a way to get that information so you have real numbers.
So there's quite a bit of that those studies that I had referenced that I include the charts from, those were academic studies in which they were able to collect that data in terms of studying that. So I don't know personally how they did it, but there is a way because they were studying performance along those corridors. So I can share with you those.
Can you just put it on the website?
Yeah, that's been kind of my understanding too, that it's been difficult to do economic impact studies. I think at the state level, there's different laws in the state around the availability of sales tax data, but I think it brings up like an excellent point. That's something that we need to be looking at and thinking about, and it's a strong reason why we should be doing more of these types of projects. So maybe we can figure out a way to just engage with the businesses directly along the corridor. Like we've talked with many of, not every single business, we're still kind of in that process, but we've talked with many of them, but maybe we can work with them on an evaluation just directly instead of trying to, wrangle sales tax data from the state.
Is it possible to then do something similar with another corridor that is being planned for future improvements? Because we could use 2 years of data from that area in order to see whether no improvements on that stretch yet lines up with similar improvements along this stretch. Because I know that any study that we do, if we're only looking at our own corridor, we're not going to have a control, and people are going to say, well, that has nothing to do with this because that would have happened regardless. And I want to make sure it's something that can't be torn apart.
It's also important for us to organize like bike rides or visits and have people from the community go to these businesses and tell the businesses directly that this is a project that we support and we will visit your business. This will get us to shop more locally and to stop more along the corridor. I think it's really along the corridor. I think it's powerful for business owners to hear directly from people in the community that this is something that can enhance the feel and the number of times they visit a business, as opposed to hearing, from the city.
Yeah. Or why they might choose their business instead of a competitor. Because that hardware store in Milwaukee, I would go to it even more because I'm not going to Home Depot, because the Home Depots that I would have to get to are horrendous by bike, and I do not own a car. Sorry, I forgot your name, but
Susie. So I was actually going to suggest one thought could be pushing for car-free days, and especially over the summer, in certain corridors that are business-oriented, and using that to try and work with the companies in that area and say, look, we want you to capture your sales data for these days, and we're going to schedule 4 of these over the summer.
Yeah.
And we're going to show you what can come, and we are going to put in temporary bike parking all around. Because I think one of the challenges is when we do street fairs, we see the bustle of the business, but we don't see, people can't bike through there, right? And people are focused on buying goods and trades that have come there that are not the city, that are not the regular business. I mean, they benefit from it too, but people are there for all of it, and it's so crowded that you can't get in there. But if you could, literally, this street every Sunday for the next 6 months, we are going to eliminate traffic and bring it back to the people. There are cities all around the world who are putting this into practice, and it's a chance to test and prove in different neighborhoods. And to get aldermen to see the value of it, to get communities to say, I can let my kids bike for a mile on a street and feel what it's like to just go to the ice cream shop.
Yeah.
And that's going to transform people's brains faster than anything else is when they see it, because then they're going to say, well, I want it on Saturday too. right? And I want it on my weekdays, right?
Yeah, and it's one of the problems that we had when we were doing I was on the First Ward Transportation Advisory Committee. We did that through Milwaukee. We didn't call them ciclovias. We had another open streets, and we did a few of them. And the first one was great because it didn't rain. We had a series of other ones and the program sort of fell by the wayside because the cost of reimbursing for parking and the cost of X, Y, and Z sort of made them infeasible. But I brought up a similar idea to the aldermen, I will not name them by name, on a further north stretch of Milwaukee where we are not getting the improvements that I think really should be happening on that stretch because businesses have complained about parking. And I said, okay, well, what if we did a pop-up? What if we did like, there are 3 weekends that we're going to do this summer, and if we do this and people realize that it will be a huge benefit to them, that maybe we can revise this. And we need to do that earlier on projects. We need to do that as part of shop local days, maybe, as part of other things, because doing it on its own is difficult to do unless you're trying to make a larger event, and paying for it is daily reminder that the parking deal sucks. I know. I said sucks. I didn't say it.
But one thing, I mean, what we can do is we can start looking at what the other options are around there. So we know that we close down streets for city festivals, and it takes an entire day and another entire day to set up and then strip down. Is there a way that we shift the way we do that and encourage businesses to open early or do extra hours or special hours to encourage people to be there prior to the set? Like, I'm just trying to think through, maybe there are options, because I agree. I mean, obviously the parking deal makes it a huge impact, and it seems like that is counterintuitive to everything that the city is trying to do, and for safety as well as financial and everything else. But how do we leverage something else that we're doing to give us a way to show and demonstrate to these businesses, hey, there really is a value in changing the way people come to your your store, your facility, or your bar. I mean,
yeah. Well, and talking about setup and breakdown times, that really could be an opportunity if we. I'd have to talk to some friends. I actually know some friends who do that setup and breakdown. I'd have to ask them whether it's something where do they really need both sides of the street, or if you're setting up something in the middle of the road, could you have one side of the street basically be a two-way cycle track?
Because I mean, the reality is people bike through it anyway.
Oh, yeah.
They bike through because they're like, woohoo, no cars. Right?
Do division is a time where you just sort of like, I'm going to go around this slightly. There's literally no one on this street right now. I'm not detouring all the way down to Grand to do something.
Maybe one more question.
We only have time for one more
Okay.
question. Go ahead, Peter.
Well, the question is for you, probably for CDOT too, is that is there any way to incentivize businesses to want to do this, as in the model of using transit-oriented development when you're doing something with transit, building a train line or something like that, to give some sort of a tax break or something from property taxes or whatever for the businesses, a small one, it doesn't have to be really big, but a small tax break to say, we want to do something different in this community, and we're going to incentivize it for you by giving you a 2% or 5% break on your property taxes or something like that. Have you guys done that? Have you thought about that, or is it been in the books anywhere? Too, as a congestion, to reduce congestion, enhance safety.
We haven't, but it's an interesting idea. Let's follow up and talk about it, because I think it's something that we're looking for all types of opportunities to encourage people and businesses to support these types of activities as well.
And that could be a way of providing a monetary equal to, like we talk about value capture, and this would be finding ways when the value might not be purely economic, but it is safety, and safety can be economic, as we see in tons of neighborhoods that suffer from a lack of people feeling safe, and then economics go right down the toilet after it. Anyway, I'll hand this off to Milani. So.
Hi, everyone. Let me figure out my my gear here. Okay. All right. So I have a very different start to my presentation probably than was intended. But I actually am going to be focusing on one particular street in my presentation, just because I think sometimes drilling down really finely on a certain area can help to reveal a sort of a constellation of issues and things that are relevant to process in particular, which is something I'm interested in. So that's just a quick recap of my goals, which were mainly about connecting people. I think as a community rep, my main sort of forte is just helping people to get together who want to have conversations about things, connecting people in the community to people who are working on higher level projects that affect the geography of an area. And so I've committed to trying to connect North Lakeshore Drive study project team with MBEC members if people are interested for a discussion of the Lakefront Trail and bike infrastructure within the project scope. And I've already started working on that. I met with Nate Roseberry, who's working with CDOT on that particular project, and shared a lot of feedback that I've been hearing about the Lakefront Trail, because that is eventually going to influence different aspects of the design for the North Lakeshore Drive project, revisioning of Lakeshore Drive on the north side. And secondly, I wanted to try to connect the Park District to stakeholders to revisit the current Lakefront Trail configuration, because the Park District is really open to tweaking that and has set up the mechanisms that Brendan mentioned at another earlier meeting to start getting feedback. And then there also are some larger groups that have concerns that are larger about certain parts of the Lakefront Trail. And so I've been trying to work on that. I did have a conversation with Park District COO about it too. And I think everybody at the Park District is really open to the idea of getting feedback. So it's really great. Oops. I think I just skipped no, there we go. So I'm starting with Lawrence Beach in 1910. So I don't know if you're familiar with Uptown. There's a kind of well-known peninsula that has Montrose Point. And actually that peninsula was all built in the 1930s. So the end of Lawrence Avenue, which is near to where I live, actually was a beach in 1910. And I'm just going to scroll through. Here we have, this is the end of Lawrence Avenue in 1929, 1931, and the beginning of what was called the the Lincoln Park extension, which was to build all of that land to make the peninsula that's there. This photo is very interesting because you can recognize basically a lot about Uptown today is still there. And I love there's a streetcar here, which basically mimics the route of the 81 and the 81 West bus along Lawrence from way over on the west side. And that actually is also, interestingly enough, where the longest, one of the longest and the northernmost 24-hour buses runs today. So this is actually the extension being built, and it's all very interesting to look at, I think. This is, here is Lawrence Avenue Beach. And then the road goes that way. So you can see there's very high dense housing here, which is very similar to what we have today. And that actually, the high density and the proximity of all the different assets in the area really encourages a very positive lifestyle for people. You can walk a lot of places, you don't need to have a car. So we're kind of, we were front loaded with a lot of advantages. We do, however, have here the beginning of the extension of Lakeshore Drive, and that eventually went this way. So see if I can go here. Okay. Oh. You want it? Can you go back one? Yeah. Okay. Oh no, there was one missing there. Okay. Well, this is what it looked like after it was filled. So that was Lakeshore Drive, and then it kind of ended and went along this way. And there's some really interesting stories, actually. There were a whole bunch of people up here at one point who were militating. They didn't want to have their street paved because they were concerned that then cars would go there too. So we might also have some I don't know, historical activism that's in the water or something up here. But so this is Lawrence Avenue here, and this is what were eventually these clover leaves. So this design, what was eventually designed here was really one of the first grade separated designs that was meant to separate cars from pedestrians, because at the time that this was all built and graded and eventually paths were laid out, people were, there was just a huge number of car casualties, like 450 people dying per year in 1935 and 1936, and 8,000 casualties, so people that have been injured, imagine, you know. So, can you go back one? So this is actually the cloverleaf shortly before its demolition, because it proved to be, that design proved to be very dangerous. And this is Lawrence and the beach there. So that's what it looked like. This building still exists. Some of these have changed. Weiss Hospital is still there. So this actually, Holiday Inn, is today a family shelter for children and families in crisis. So it's amazing how similar it is today. Could you move it forward? Okay, so this is the beach today, ironically a BP station. It's actually, this is Clarendon Avenue, which leads down to a very famous beach that had been Chicago's demonstration for, it was like their proof of concept for public beaches. And so Clarendon comes here as Marine Drive, so it's very close. And this tiny little intersection actually has, it's pretty hazardous because we don't have, it's too many curb cuts and all kinds of things. And it's just been sort of a perpetual like thorn in the side of the neighborhood. So I thought it's interesting that on that particular day, Google Maps captured 4 people on their bikes. Okay, and that, the other thing that is kind of interesting about Lawrence Avenue is it's actually the designated bike route. And it was designated in 2014. IDOT was making an effort to show its commitment to active transportation. And so we like that. You want to? Okay, so the other thing about Lawrence is it's actually just amazing crosstown route. You can connect to so many different other modes of transportation by going across Lawrence. You can get to the airports, which kind of speaks to the potential for even, as somebody who's traveled elsewhere, to have like distance ride type trips and things like that. I think there's a potential for, we were talking about economic potential for ecotourism actually. I actually have met people that have a Google map that shows the US bike route, and they're like on the Lakefront Trail looking for the bike trail for the US bike route. And that's how I found out about it. So, you know, you cross all this possible ways to connect. Okay, so now I'm going to just, so you can quickly see, this is, I'm talking about this intersection where the beach was, and this is the beach today, or what's really that view when we started, when I started the presentation. It's just a beautiful view, and people flock to this area in the summer. It's a huge destination. So this is the census tract where I live, and that's the hospital there. And as you can see, it's a very high dense population there for 1/10 of a mile. And this is all the lake fill that was done, you know, in the 1930s. Yeah. Okay, so just to reiterate some of the sort of factoids about that census tract. There's serious economic challenges. I think a lot of people have an idea that Lincoln Park is actually like a very wealthy white place, but Lincoln Park is very big, and it extends really much farther north than the neighborhood Lincoln Park. And so my little census tract, actually, you know, we have 47% of adults live below poverty, 64% of kids usually estimated to be below poverty line. It'll be interesting to see what the census reveals. The other sort of economic challenge is that it's predominant. I mean, we have more females, so females don't earn as much, and so that kind of makes an impact for future earnings as well. I don't know, my stars kind of flew around here, but another really cool thing is it's, pretty representative neighborhood. We've got 31% Black, 19% Asian, 13% Hispanic, and then 33% white, and then many people that identify in other ways. There's that's a little bit higher mean travel time than in Cook County generally, but it's a pretty good travel time. And people choose green modes, predominantly. One of our census tracts, I think it's 77% of people commute via green modes. We live in high density. And the other amazing thing is just the range of languages. 39% of children speak other at home. We have many people from parts of the world, from Africa in particular, speaking other languages. So this is both a challenge in some ways, but it's also an amazing potential because anything you do here has the potential, the message can go out so far. And so a lot of times people focus on the poverty and crime and things like that, and people feel really negatively. And so we've worked really hard in Uptown and different organizations to try to kind of talk about what a wonderful place this is to live and how kids there are modeling these things like walking to school and doing things that everybody's asking us to do, for the planet and so on. So it's a kind of cool, it's cool potential there. Okay, so just as an example of one of the things that we did in the ward that worked out pretty well was we did participatory budgeting, and I don't know if that might be something for Jake to try to find one of his aldermen that would. Yeah. Okay. But. Well, and we only did it once, but it had a pretty big impact, actually. We had a lot of bike infrastructure done, but the number one winning vote winner was actually Walkable 46, which was all about these small little corners and things that people needed to have fixed that have been persistent issues for people. And we got a lot of things done, but that little corner there on Lawrence, nobody could really figure it out, and so it still hasn't been fixed. We're working on it, though. So these are just examples of crashes on that little corner. As you can see, we have a very narrow sidewalk because sidewalk was given over to lanes because it is this accidental arterial to Lakeshore Drive. That's another one where this is a car that went up right where a bunch of kids always cluster. That's our children's shelter there. So, and then these are the interior parks of Lincoln Park. So it's kind of, and this is actually bike lanes that were put in to try to help people get over to the lake recently. Do you want to put it forward? Okay, so that's, this is my little joke that we keep strolling because we both roll. This is actually a person I see every day coming from the nursing home. The husband comes and picks her up in a chair that rolls, and they go to Walgreens. So they're crossing Lawrence Avenue there, and then there's a bunch of kids heading to the lakefront and a family that's hanging out there. So it's all this kind of small space, but 12,000 to 13,000 cars a day go by here. So it's quite a challenge. Okay, so a lot of, maybe it's sort of a setback for us locally was that bike lanes were put in, and nobody really knows where the bike lanes originated and why they were done. And so there was this lack of public process, and that probably elicited a lot of suspicion about infrastructure projects when we kind of had been headed in the right way. So that there were all these questions. Was this project, we had folks that were sleeping in the viaducts, and so there was the perception that maybe this project was meant to displace them. Ironically, they were displaced in the first year. We had really bad maintenance. This is actually from this year. There's just been, I think there's a question of who's supposed to be maintaining it. It's one of those jurisdictional gray areas, and that's something to look for if you're trying to work out a process and have everybody on board so that nothing nothing bad happens. If you're going to put something in, then let's maintain it and do it right so that it gets a positive response. Ironically, the people have recently moved back in, and they did a really good job of cleaning the viaducts. So we've been kind of happy to see that. Okay, another project that has created a lot of community interest and engagement is the North Lakeshore Drive project. And it got to the point where we actually had a referendum because people do not want to close the on-off ramps that exist here at Wilson by the hospital so they can get to the ER. And the referendum, had a huge turnout. It's hard to see it there, but it was basically, almost 95% of the people that were voting in the general election voted to not close these. And so the project team went ahead and did a sort of study of that area and determined that the alternative that closes that intersection is really the best alternative, or the top performing alternative. And people have a lot of questions about that because we haven't yet seen the pedestrian and bike improvements. I know that those are being worked on, and there is a task force meeting coming up on the 9th of March. But there again, people voted one way and they feel as though they're not being represented in this. And they're also, this is another sort of tip, is to try to avoid things that people can't understand. I actually had somebody call me and say, "What is LOS?" And I haven't had a chance to reach out and find out which LOS definition was used, but that's an example. So that all sounds kind of daunting, I think. But I think the thing to focus on is just how amazing all these things, like if you want to come to Uptown, which is sort of my invite, and just see all of the different things that have been done. There are a lot of different types of treatments and things that have been done. We have stuff going back to the 70s. We have something called Sunshine Mall that was, all concrete at one time and is beautiful today. We have the new Uplift Plaza. We have Argyle. So, the Lakefront Trail, I thought this was really interesting. Oops, I think I did that. This is the Lakefront Trail. This is actually the bike trail. And all these children came over from the neighborhood and were using it for their scooters and just falling down and lying down. And it's just part of the neighborhood is that people like to go to the lake because we don't really have a lot of parks. In fact, we have almost no parks. We have cemeteries. But the lake is sort of our front yard and our backyard. And so it's a good place to incubate some of these ideas and then also get people, there's a lot of people there to ask for feedback. And so it's a big opportunity, I think, for learning. And on that note, I wanted to suggest that people really make an effort to give feedback to the Lakefront Trail project. This is a family that's crossing the new bike trail. And it's very interesting. It was just, an evening and people coming back from the lake. And, I think mostly people are observing that there's a lot of people walking on trails and people are riding on both trails. And so I think there's one sort of recommendation. I know everybody wants to separate modes, but sometimes maybe people learn a lot and can adapt when they share. And I feel like my area has been really good at that historically. Like, this part of the trail, actually the Lakefront Trail originally was the highest rated, longest section for user satisfaction in the 2013 Friends of the Lakefront Trail study. And that's kind of revealing that people, maybe they had enough room up there. Or it could be the trees too. It's a very beautiful place to ride. And that's one of my sort of personal goals in my role with MBAC is I'd like to see us move towards having bike infrastructure that looks more like a park rather than having things look more like a road, because I think people feel more comfortable in the park. I've seen it over and over again. So I just wanted to invite everybody, when it's warm, maybe we could have an MBAC site visit and go and see some of these things. There's some really cool history, like cost-saving things they did in the 30s so that they didn't have to put up signs and stuff like that. So anyway, that's it.
Does anyone have we got time for one or two questions, I think.
Simple question. How do you engage? How do you ask questions to people? Are you just walking up to people? Or are you talking to your own?
I do. I just walk up to folks. But we also,
okay.
you know,
I do what we think.
I actually am involved in a lot of different groups in the area, different groups that work in other arenas, and I co-founded something called the Uptown Coastal Initiative, which meant the whole idea of it was to train people about different lenses of sustainability and look at our physical surroundings, sort of use it as an experiential classroom, and I could definitely recommend that model. You know, when you have a few people present about something just for 5 minutes or you know, something simple, and then you go out and you show people, then your neighborhood becomes more conversant about those things.
One last question. That the bike lane and the walking lane on the sidewalk, is that being used?
Somewhat. And now we have people living under there again, so it's a little harder. I was a bike commuter for 11, 13 years, and I didn't really have a problem because there was a good design on the far side of Lawrence. You just went across Lawrence and then popped into the thing. So I've seen people use it, but it's been a little bit problematic. But I mean, if it was wide enough, it would be better, I think. Yeah. Yes?
So I have a question about what you were saying about like sharing infrastructure between pedestrians and cyclists. And especially in the section that you're talking about, I feel like as a cyclist that it's really dangerous because there are so many pedestrians walking around not really paying attention necessarily. And you know, like I'm like 180 pounds of bone and steel, like on my bicycle. Like if I hit someone, like you could really hurt them.
Where are you talking about, in the Montrose area?
Yeah, just like on the Lakefront Trail in general. And so I'm just curious, like what you
like
about like the safety
I think
aspect of that.
two things that I think, one is in our area at least, things that had historically been a pedestrian path became a bike path, and there aren't complete alternatives yet. They're working on it, but complete alternatives yet for people to walk to the lake, for instance. But I think also there might be a conversation that we as cyclists need to have about how we encourage other cyclists to slow down, and also just to accept that in a park setting you might have a lot of people around. You're going to have to change the way that you approach pedestrians. And we have a ton of people with walkers. And it's amazing where they get in what kind of weather, man. I just, my mom's 94, and I'm like, you want to go there? But I think if we have our blinders on and we smile at each other, and those are two different behaviors. So I agree. It's sometimes a challenge. I mean, it's a big conversation I'd love to have. So.
Thanks, Milani. Yeah. Milani will be here at the end of the meeting, so if you have a question, you can follow up with her. Apologize. We're running a little long. So next on the agenda, can I get the clicker? I'm going to talk a little bit about our scooter pilot. Scooter. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to talk very quickly about our e-scooter pilot program that we ran last year. If I can, next slide. Okay, there we go. So as most of you probably know, we ran a pilot from June to October last year. We had 10 different companies and 2,500 scooters. We limited the geography, and we had 2 pilot zones on the northwest and the southwest that were actually priority zones. We wanted to make sure that those areas received scooters every day, and so we required that each company put 25% of its scooters in each of the 2 westernmost parts of the pilot area. Those were our equity priority zones. We did require that scooters be removed from the street every night and rebalance all the scooters daily. And we were also getting real-time data, which we've actually released. The MDS data is available on the city's data portal. Next slide. So we had 821,000 trips. As you probably are not surprised, most popular times were the evening rush hours and 3 to 4 on weekends. But even despite having the priority zones on the west side, we did see that 77% of our rides started or ended, and you can see the heat map up there. 77% of the rides started or ended in the eastern half of the pilot area, which includes mostly the West Loop for example. And we had 192, and Margarita can talk about this, but 192 probable injuries. We got data. We asked the emergency departments to code if there was a scooter involved in an injury, if someone visiting an emergency room, and we did our best to then go through all the data, find that, and look and identify the ones that were probably related to an e-scooter injury. Is that an accurate representation?
Yeah, so we have access for the CDC, this National Syndromal Surveillance, which is ER visits. So all of our Chicago hospitals, but I also have the hospitals that are outside of Chicago where the residents that went to the hospitals. So we captured like Oak Park Hospitals, Evanston. So if they had a resident in Chicago address, and so then I actually looked at the data to see if they were possibly e-scooter related.
Okay.
So.
Thanks, Margaret. Next slide. So we didn't see a ton of issues. I mean, we obviously, as you probably, no one would be surprised, the biggest concerns we heard from the public were people riding on sidewalks and poor parking behavior. Those were the two things that came up consistently as issues within the pilot. But we didn't see piles of scooters all over the place. We didn't see some of the situations that other cities have seen. So we really felt it was worth doing another pilot this year. Let's go to the next slide. We did learn that people are polarized about. We had 12,000 people actually respond to our survey, which, from my perspective, it's obviously it's an issue that really gets people to respond. But we told that, and the people were roughly split between people who had ridden and people who hadn't ridden. And I think about 2/3 of people said we should give it another try. Not sure if it should be part of the the transportation landscape permanently, but we should do another pilot. And so that's what we're going to be doing. We need to obviously work on the sidewalk riding. We need to fix and work on some of the parking issues. We need to get people more engaged in communities so they know what's happening and can better influence how those scooter operators participate and operate in their communities. Next slide. So what's next? We are literally in the I came to this meeting from a scooter pilot meeting. We are in the process of developing what our next pilot looks like. We do intend to limit the number of companies. We had 10 companies last year. We're hoping to get that down to 2 or 3 companies at the most, using objective criteria to screen, including things like past performance. We have not determined the geography yet, but we are expecting it will be a larger geography than last year. The parking is one big issue, so one of the things we are likely to include is a lock-to requirement, so that the scooters will have to lock to a rack, a light pole, or something else to end a trip, so that there's better control of what's the parking in the public way. And then really, we had programs for unbanked folks, and we had programs for people without smartphones, but there wasn't a lot of uptake on those. But part of it was there were a lot of hurdles to actually access those programs. Like Divvy for Everyone, which you're going to hear about in a couple minutes, we make it as easy as possible for people to sign up. Scooter companies often had one location, only open relatively limited hours, et cetera, which made it really difficult for people to access that at a discount. That's all I've got on the scooter pilot. I can take one question, but I do, in the interest of time, want to keep us moving along. Margarita?
I had a question in terms of, I know that you did a survey, and I know that CDOT did some messaging about safety and stuff.
Yeah.
But what about, especially from the western, part of the pilot area, what are the main concerns from those areas in terms of people that participated or didn't participate? You know what I mean? Like, I talked to some folks that I know that are from South Lawndale or whatever, so I didn't get sort of a clear message from that,
I'll look at the survey results and see. I don't know that we have a good answer there.
But I'm just asking CDOT
yeah.
from the work that has been done, before the pilot, during the pilot, have there been any concerns, I don't know, infrastructure in the streets, just stuff, other things, like people maybe not knowing, is this for us, or, similar things like protected bike lanes, kind of.
I think the biggest question that was probably, is this for us? And we did hear, there was a lot of press around this, but not everyone gets their news through the press, Facebook, social media, et cetera. And I think we did hear fairly consistently, like we didn't know anything about this. These scooters just showed up. So that was definitely something that we heard, even though we felt like there was a lot, all of the press that's in this room wrote many articles about it when it was coming. We did social media blasts. Obviously there was a gap there. So, in the interest, Ellen, I'll give you one. Yeah.
The lock to capability. If you don't lock it, do you get charged more? And can you do that? Because that seems to be, if you have the capability, if people aren't doing it, but if it's going to cost them money to not lock.
I think we're going to require that. I think what will happen is they will be required to lock the scooter to something to end their trip. And until they do that, the clock on their trip keeps running, so it is costing them money. Yeah, yep. Okay, thanks. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Amanda.
All right, it's time for the Divvy update, and I'd like to invite my friends and colleagues. Let's all go up the front. I'd like to invite two of my favorite friends, Johnson A. and Nina Imudia. And we're going to talk about the Divvy expansion, and we're also going to talk about how we have learned about what that ought to look like. And I'm going to...
Hello, everyone. I'm Johnson A. Johnson, the Community Affairs Lead for the Divvy Bike Share System. We're going to actually start off with a video kind of highlighting Lyft's investment in Chicago. So take it away, Romy.
This summer, we went on a tour of 8 neighborhoods across the city of Chicago, neighborhoods that our bike share program will be expanding to. Our goal was to solicit feedback with the help of Muse and CDOT's bikeways. It's very important to us that the system serves the residents of the communities in which they live. So for instance, we'll ask questions about where would people like to see a site? How often would they ride? Where would they ride to?
Bike share can create job opportunities for young people and young people with barriers because, since it began in Chicago, it's something that's started from what it was to as big as what it is now. So it means it's always growing, and since it expands, you gotta hire more people. So that means it creates more job opportunities for people from local bicycle nonprofits like Westbound Bikes or Blackstone to be able to use that training and get employment opportunities at places like Divvy.
Programs like Blackstone Bicycle Work are made stronger and better with corporate sponsorships, like with Divvy. Divvy has been invaluable not only by supporting Blackstone, but continuing to support through jobs, through corporate sponsorship, through opportunities. My children have been able to not only start with Blackstone Bicycle Works, but move over into experiencing corporate experiences through companies like Divvy. I cannot thank them enough. I cannot thank Blackstone enough. I support programs like Blackstone and their cooperative program with Divvy, and I hope that you'll support them as well.
In 2019, we're very excited to be expanding our partnership with Divvy. Divvy is sponsoring us in our Bike Mechanic Boot Camp program that we will be having an even larger focus on training young people in bicycle mechanics to become candidates to work for Divvy as Divvy mechanics.
We were inspired to apply for a bike share grant at SEN because we'd established the Divvy for Everyone program with our clients, but we were having a little difficulty in really managing to provide the level of outreach that I think the program deserves. And with this help from the grant, we'll hopefully be able to enroll a lot of our clients who are Syrian refugees in the Divvy for Everyone program, which means effectively they'll have free transport in the Chicagoland area.
Having access to bike share has definitely benefited my life because when I was in high school,
that was my main way of getting to school, to and from. I did 3 miles to school, 3 miles back every single day. And sometimes my parents would work like day and night, so no one was able to pick me up from school. Sometimes CTA was like running late, like I'll have to wait like 15 minutes for like the bus. Like I'm a Divvy girl, I can ride like anywhere I want at any time.
Thank you, guys. Sometimes it's good to see the investment being done. We can talk all day, but it's great to hear from our community partners. As of now, I'm just going to give you a brief recap of our 2019 Divvy for Everyone engagement. There we go. Our outreach team attended 165 events citywide, all in partnership with Chicago-based community organizations or nonprofit. Our goal was to make sure that residents are knowledgeable about the Divvy for Everyone program, and our program is accessible and affordable for all Chicagoans. We reached over 15,000 community residents citywide using this approach and toured 8 community areas on the far south side with the goal of providing community forums and informing residents on our expansion efforts. We supported over 50 community bike rides just this summer alone and conducted 4 community roundtables within areas currently not being served by Divvy with the goal of finding what's the best way to increase mobility access in these communities. Since the start of the mechanics training program, we've hired 6 trainees as bike mechanics and looking forward to continue to step the efforts up as we begin to expand. Just to recap, we provided $100K in mini grants to support 15 community-based organizations, and the goal is for them to create programming to promote bike share uses throughout the city. This is just a little recap of our engagement efforts from 2019. We look forward to figure out how we could connect with new stakeholders and continue our efforts moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Nina Idamudia. I work for Muse Community Design. So I'm just going to go over basically our philosophy behind our outreach approach. So we would like to meet people where they are. We want to make sure that our outreach efforts are flexible, approachable, and tailored to the community regardless of their knowledge of Divvy or their interest in bike riding, because we want to engage everyone regardless of their level of bike riding skill or knowledge about Divvy and what they do, so that we can really get the feedback that will help expand the program in the right ways. We also act as translators. Of course, people within their communities are the experts. We listen to them and then we translate their needs into actions. We identify stakeholders and we convene them. So we ask them the right questions, make sure that the right people are at the table and that everybody feels represented. And we help them to build their own narrative. So instead of constructing something based purely off of data, we like to make sure that the stakeholders and their views and points of interest are really heard and created into a narrative so that we can understand how we can target the opportunities and then also how we can go forth with challenges and help to combat those. And then we take action, which is everybody's favorite part when you actually take action and use people's input and actually put it on the ground. And so that's the really exciting part about this project. And we evaluate successes. I think that there have been definitely a lot of wins and we still have a lot of work to do, but it's also good to acknowledge where we've done a good job, and then we celebrate the progress. So if you go to the next slide, so specifically with our station siting process, we go to community events. We have suggest a station at a lot of our events. We mentioned the round tables before, where they're a little bit more intimate gatherings where we have maps and we can say, you know, like on this corner or on that corner, what's better for your community. And then we also have just 16 standard siting criteria for stations. We evaluate all the ideas and think about their feasibility, because there are definitely things that we may not consider when we're going into the community, and they can say, like, you know, this corner's kind of dark, there's not really a lot of safety over here, or, you know, this intersection is not the best. And then we kind of make all that, we kind of translate that and then understand like what's feasible in our analysis. And then we vet the ideas. So we go back to the community, we say, you know, this is what your neighbor said, or this is what the community is saying. Did we get it right? And then that way, that's kind of like a second step of verification of if these are the right ideas. And then we prioritize locations, thinking about the entire network, because we want to make sure that the entire city of Chicago has access to this program. And then we install, promote, and celebrate, which will be the next step coming in the spring.
Yeah, we love to celebrate.
Yes, we love to celebrate. Okay, so some interesting things, if you go to the next slide. Some interesting things that we've heard back. So we've been able to, during our engagement, we have surveys. We've been able to collect a few hundred surveys, kind of understanding where people, not only understanding where people would like the stations, but also any barriers to actually riding bikes. And so a lot of things that we've learned is that a majority of people who took the survey said that they would use Divvy for recreational uses. And I think that that was something that was very important for our team to understand, so we understand how people are actually using the Divvy service and how we can tailor our stations or our work plans around that. People in these communities overwhelmingly consider Divvy to be a positive, important service for their neighborhood, so that's also a good thing. Most people express that they only see themselves riding a few times, but mostly with family. So again, kind of like reinforcing that Divvy is being used or would be used for recreational purposes, and that due to infrastructure and connectivity challenges, specifically on the south side, residents do not feel comfortable riding in streets. So this helps us understand with the Bikeways team, okay, what infrastructure would make people feel more comfortable, but then also on the Lyft Divvy side, what education could we be offering to community members to make them feel safer when riding? Is it that you don't know how to ride a bike, you don't know how to safely ride on a major street, and kind of parsing that out so that people feel like the program is accessible to them. And lastly, you go to the next slide, please. What we've also done is do these one-on-one stakeholder interviews to really get more in depth with the expansion of the program. And for some of the interviews that we've done, we've turned them into videos. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you can see all of the videos that we've done thus far. One of them is done completely in Spanish, which is really exciting, and just putting a face to the Divvy program and how it really impacts the community on the ground.
And so with all this great outreach work and engagement work, we focus on the engagement end because we want more to learn from community members as opposed to us reaching out and disseminating information. It's us. We're the ones who need to learn. I'm just going to try and blaze through these. I want to just give some basic information on what we can expect from the system. First, for those of you who don't know, not only are we expanding geographically, but there's a technology upgrade that is happening. So there will be 2 different types of bikes in the system. The classic blue bike that everybody knows that needs to dock in stations, and this new hybrid electric bike which can dock in a station or use this cable lock to a bike rack or any other, legal bike parking space. Next slide, please. This is a great example. These bikes will be able to you'll be able to check them out with a phone app. Even the black bikes and the blue bikes, the same, will be a QR code scan feature now on both models of the bikes. That upgrade is taking place right now. This is an example of a person locking up outside of a traditional Divvy station. Next slide, please. And then this is an example. Up here in the corner is the traditional station that most people know that's out on the streets today. And this is the design for the new, what we're referring to as a hub. So a lot of the locations, we're starting small with these to see how they work and how people use them, but they're essentially just a very robust branded bike parking area. So there will be a few of these in the expansion area as well. And only the black bikes that have the cable lock will be able to end their trips there. So we'll be also operationally making sure that those areas are, balanced with the bikes that are needed in order for the system to function. And something else to keep in mind is it used to be the paradigm was the only place that you could use Divvy was within the station network, right? Because your experience was focused entirely on stations. Where's the station? I need to start at a station, I need to end at a station. But now we have this new flexibility that means that people can end their trips in between stations. It means we need fewer stations in order to have a functioning, robust network. So when we show you the dots on the map for where the stations are gonna go, and you see fewer of them, it's important to keep in mind that it's not just an expansion of the system, but it's an upgrade of the technology. So when the stations are far apart from one another, people can end their trip midway and still be able to get to their destination more flexibly. Make sense? All right, next slide, please. So you've all seen this map before. This is the expansion area on the far south side. This is a close-up of it, just highlighting the different neighborhoods, and the colors on the map demarcate the MBAC regions. So it includes the far southwest, far southeast, and a little bit of this southeast end on this side. And the next slide. Here they are, folks. Subject to change, but this is what has been proposed to all of the aldermen. This shows 66 stations and 12 hubs. So you'll notice that there are these green dots are the hubs, the red dots are the stations, and you'll also notice that the green dots are further out from the initial network because we want to make sure that the stations that are closest in to our current network, which relies heavily on the blue bikes, we want to make sure that those blue bikes are encouraged to stay closer areas and that the hubs are further out here where a person's less likely to try to access one with a blue bike. In addition, you may also notice that there are 10 miles of bikeways that are included on this map. These are all proposed as well. Some of them are just more potential future projects here that have been also proposed by the Bikeways team. But these were all things that were identified through the through the engagement process where we went out and asked people what they were looking for. And so those are all also in design and on target for spring. Just a reminder that Divvy will be citywide by spring of 2021. All the stations will be down, so this is the kind of energy that goes into putting in 66. We have another 110 to go, not including the hubs. And the bikeways that are planned for this portion of the expansion will be funded with the Divvy sponsorship money that CDOT is receiving from Lyft. Okay, Christina was the first to raise her hand. I want to make sure that we do have time for Tom, because Tom also has a presentation, and I feel bad that we're going over. But
has there been any updates on what the pricing model will look like for e-bikes? Because I believe there's going to be less regular bikes going forward. Is that correct?
There will be fewer regular bikes, but there will be a majority of e-bikes in the system.
So the amount of regular bikes, the total number will not go down?
No. It will not go down. At some point they will reach the end of their useful life and be replaced out, but no one yet has figured out when that is because they're all running like tanks in Toronto and all these other cities. But the question about pricing.
With e-bikes, or will they be replaced with regular bikes when they do phase out?
E-bikes.
Okay, so that number will inevitably go down?
Eventually.
Okay.
But to answer your question about pricing, that is a very robust discussion that is happening. The city has final approval over all of that, and as I'm sure everybody here would agree, that conversation requires a lot of discussion. So nothing public on that at this time. John?
All right, word on the street is that the contract has been delayed because there are administrative problems with IDOT and the Federal Highway Administration. So there's some question about whether the program is actually going to launch in the spring. Do you have an update on that? I mean, is this actually going to happen?
There's no delay related to the contract.
Approvals?
But we are on target for spring.
Okay, so it is
on target for spring.
Yes, it is.
Okay, great.
Alan?
2 quickies. One, will you please ban e-bikes from sidewalks?
They already are.
For children under 12, so you change the ordinance? Thank you.
Oh, for children under 12.
Yes.
Sorry, thanks for remembering that,
All right.
Alan.
I don't even know Rebecca's not here.
We remember, Alan. They can't write.
I'm sorry?
I said we remember.
I know, but I want you to change the ordinance.
Yeah.
And then, can people attach regular bikes to the hub, and how do you prevent that?
Thank you.
They can. They will. People will inevitably lock their personal bikes to the Divvy hubs. It's not our preference. There will be very robust communications around that to try to support keeping those spaces clear for people. There will be a sign. It'll be branded. But also, we just recognize that there's going to be a need for bike parking no matter what. So we also are enhancing just the standard regular public bike parking along with it. I am sorry, but I feel like we really need to let Tom have the floor because he's here to talk about also a great program. I will be here after. Feel free to ask me any further questions.
So I'm going to do a quick little speed dating presentation. If you can go to the next slide. We are Free Bikes for Kids. I'm Tom, and in the back is Leah Ruth, who is our volunteer and partnership coordinator. I want to start with the obvious question. Raise of hands, who remembers their first bike? And usually brings a smile to most everybody's face. The unfortunate reality is millions and millions of kids don't have that opportunity. Enter Free Bikes for Kids. Simply, and I will read this, that passionate about well-being of children, Free Bikes for Kids brings communities together to sustainably furnish bikes to kids in need, providing a pathway to health, happiness, and opportunity. Specifically here in Chicago, we are partnering with a lot of local companies and organizations that will help provide volunteers, that will help with sponsorships, and communication outreach about the program in helping us accomplish our goals. So we are the 10th chapter in an organization that's growing quite a bit nationally. To date, in the last 10 years, there have been over 80,000 bicycles distributed to kids around the country. And the simple model is, when you think about it, it doesn't take much of, there are bikes in garages everywhere collecting dust. Parents don't know what to do with them. Unfortunately, a lot of them wind up finding their way to landfill. So what we do is we also identify that there are millions of kids that can't afford bikes. We solve that problem. And we try to solve a few problems. We all know that kids on bikes get healthy, active. It's all a good thing, but there is an environmental part of this of trying to eliminate a lot of the waste and go into landfill. A couple quick fun facts. Of 25 million bikes are sold every year in the U.S. A third of those are kids' bikes of 20-inch wheels and smaller. 8 million are outgrown, and so, you know, we do have an endless supply of bikes, and as our organization grows around the country, we are looking to, you know, just continue this sustainable program. So last year, we decided to come to Chicago, and the first thing we did was meet with several organizations and key organizations that, you know a little thing about, they knew a few things about bikes and kids, and but we really wanted to get some advice and direction. We also, at the same time, consulted with the bike nonprofit community, and we wanted to make sure that, whether it was Alex and Garth at Westtown Bikes or the group down at Blackstone, the great people. In fact, it was Working Bikes that introduced me to Free Bikes for Kids. But I wanted to make sure that there wasn't a conflict, that it wasn't going to conflict with anything that we were doing. And to my pleasant surprise, it really fills a void. Most of the bike nonprofits and community bike shops in town, their youth programs are high school kids and older. And they don't really focus on a lot of the younger kids' bikes. So have the great vote of confidence to work with the nonprofit community. And so far, they've been great partners in helping in a lot of tremendous ways. So we then learned where the need was. And it didn't take much with talking to the right organizations to find out in Chicago where the under-resourced neighborhoods are, where we could work in conjunction with the right organizations to provide bikes and to do that. So, oh, that's not us. No, this is a different. Oh. Not our slides. Okay, I had several more. So I'm going to wing it from here without the slides. So basically, we have partnered with 7 communities and the community organizations with those. And we did it from a geographic standpoint, year 1, not to go too far out. But we started in Inglewood, and I'm sorry Fatal's not here today because he was the first group that we worked with and got to know the Inglewood neighborhood. So from Inglewood, Auburn, Gresham, up to Little Village, North Lawndale, Austin, West Garfield Park, and up to Belmont Cragen. Those are the 7 communities that we're working in. And we have met with about, I think the last count was 28 different organizations within each one of those communities combined that are what we call our bike beneficiary community, or bike beneficiary partners, which is where the bikes go. We don't choose the kids. We let the organizations that know the families, know the need to do that. So our model this year, and I don't know if you can backtrack to the one that says our model of the collection day and the bike refurbish program, but there's 3 key parts to Free Bikes for Kids. One more before. So basically, we do a 1-day citywide bike collection, which is going to be April 4th, about a month from this Saturday. We are partnering with Home Depot, and what's really cool is the Chicago Fire Department, working with them as our collection point. So we will do this pretty big outreach in the next month, and you'll hopefully hear about it from a lot of our partner organizations, some of the advocacy groups, the local media, both print, online, television, radio. But it'll be, hey, Chicago, bring your gently used kids' bikes to any one of these participating Home Depots, fire departments on Saturday, April 4th. Cool partnership is we're working with the veterans in the Chicagoland area to help us at Home Depots for the bike collection. We're also working with the Chicago White Sox Volunteer Corps that is going to help us at the fire stations. And so that's going to help kick off our program to get, our goal this year is between 2,000 and 3,000 kids' bikes. Then we will get trucks to bring all of these bikes to a central warehouse. Our central warehouse is located at Elston and Cortland, so near the Clybourne Metro Station. It's also catty corner to what's going to be Lincoln Yards. But it's a really good location right off the highway, strategic for corporate volunteers. And the majority of our volunteers and what we're looking for is individual volunteers, corporate groups, the bike community, and several levels of mechanics to help us do a few things. One, clean bikes, organize, help parts, help fix things, and then we will have a level of certified bike mechanics that will check off every bike to make sure that it is safe to then get on the road and to give away. At the end of this kind of 10-week program, which will go from April 6th through June 12th, so we'll have about 10 weeks for people to come in and volunteer. At the end of this, we then do a bike giveaway, and it's done in 2 ways. One, groups in Inglewood, we're trying to coordinate with Teamwork Inglewood to get several of the, there's like 7 nonprofit organizations that are down there that we're trying to work with, but to get bikes to the community in a bulk distribution. So come pick up your X hundreds of kids' bikes, get it back to the community, and then they will do various giveaways per their organization. So that'll happen from Belmont Cragen all the way down, a lot of these organizations. The other thing that we're going to do is on June 13th, we will do a bike giveaway event at the warehouse where we will invite in a lot of families, and we're targeting about 500 or 600 families with kids that will come in, and with a volunteer process of come go to a sizing station, figure out which size bike, go get your bike, come get a helmet. We will be giving a helmet with every bike. Then go to a mechanic station, get your bike, sized right. Then go to a rules of the road area where we'll have several groups working with kids, bike safety, simple rules. And now that we've had the majority of the bikes out of our warehouse, we'll also set up a riding area where several groups are also working with us to do how to ride a bike safely for the first time, which will be a lot of the kids. So I know all of you are wondering, how can I help? So it's 3 ways, but we'll talk about 2. One obviously is financially. We're working with corporations, big and small, from bike shop partners all the way to AT&T and everything in between, to help us financially. It cost about $30 to get a kid's bike and a helmet in the hands of a kid in Chicago. So on our site, there will be areas where you can donate $30 increments and as much as you want. But where we can really use everybody's help is, 1, helping us get the word out. If there's any of your organizations that we can talk to and connect with, that you can tell your community, hey, April 4th, bring your kids' bikes, and if you want to volunteer. So we could use everybody's help to get the word out. And then the biggest way is to come volunteer. There's 3 times of volunteering, the collection day, but the big need is during this 10-week refurbish program. So individually, as a team building thing with any of your organizations, corporate volunteers, anybody that knows of bike mechanics that have a little time on their hands. We can use any and all levels of mechanics and those that know how to wrench on bikes. We are working with a lot of the bike nonprofits of kids that have gone through a lot of the programs to come do some couple-month intern programs to continue working on things. But the more bike mechanic people that we have at this one level, the more efficient the process will go. But you don't have to know how to work on a bike to help. There will be more bike cleaners than bike mechanics to get this thing going. I do want to give a quick kind of shout out to the partner that has donated our warehouse space, which is, of all people, Perillo Motor Group. And also the property is owned by Sterling Bay and Perillo, and both of them see the value in what we're doing and want to be a part of this. And part of why I'm excited about it is that it just happened this week. So I can start sleeping better at night now that we have a warehouse. So that is Free Bikes for Kids. We are happy to be in Chicago. We would love for all of you and any of you to help us in any way that you want. Leah Ruth does have a sign-up sheet if anybody wants to give us your name to keep in contact with, and we'll hang out after the meeting to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you everyone for coming to today's MBAC. We really appreciate it. Our next meeting, actually don't have the date. Romina, do you have the date of that? It's on the slide, I think. June 10th, does that sound right? There we go, thanks. Thanks for agreeing to June 10th. And, yeah.
Did we want to public comment?
Oh, was there any public comment, any other general questions?
Sorry
Sure.
for the last
Yeah,
minute.
sorry about that.
What? Yes.
Hey guys, we're gonna try and keep it together here for a minute. Public comments?
2 more minutes.
Yeah, here's a public comment. The way I see it, the dangers, we have a Vision Zero program, and that means we want to really get rid of all accidents, particularly fatalities. There's a lot more pedestrian fatalities than there are bicyclist fatalities by a long shot, about 10 to 1, I think. Now, the dangers come from high speeds and from vehicles. Those are the 2 things. No, pedestrians don't have to pay attention for anything else except when they're walking. Other pedestrians, there's no danger walking into another pedestrian, even one's bigger than the other. And they can't be looking out for high-speed bicyclists or scooters and things like that. So I don't go with the mixing of bicycles and pedestrians. Simple as that.
Peter has something. Peter, where'd Peter go? There you go. Margaret, please.
Hello, everyone. Just want to go over this briefly. We're trying to get on this agenda here, and it's very difficult to do that. I'm here to talk about the Major Taylor Trail, the Major Taylor Trail is a mature trail. A mature trail that's been here in Chicago for a while. It's named after the first African-American cycling superstar. It runs from the southwest quadrant of Chicago to Riverdale, Illinois. 7 mile rails to trails conversion of the former Conrail spur connects Dan Ryan Woods Forest Preserve to Whistler Woods Forest Preserve. It's operated by the Forest Preserve District of Cook County, CDOT, and the Chicago Park District. It touches 5 wards. It's surrounded by 200,000 Chicagoans. It crosses 3 metro lines and 9 major streets. It also connects to the Cal-Sag Trail. Since 2016 is the first time we raised a punch list of issues. There's 9 areas that are under CDOT control that need to have safety improvements, and it's very difficult to get on the agenda to talk about that. I had a list of 27 slides to show you today. We're down to 1. So this is basically probably the most glaring issue when you're coming from the north on the Major Taylor Trail and you're going, coming from the south and you're going north. This is at 115th and Vincennes, which is a major crossing intersection between 2 trails. The Major Taylor Trail comes in this way and it goes out that way. The Vincennes bike lane goes that way and comes up from this direction. There is no real way to get for a cyclist. When you get here, you're lost. It's ended. The world is ended. So if you want to get to the Major Taylor Trail, somehow you have to fight across. There's traffic here. There's no stoplight, no crossing, no anything. So our proposed treatment is to take this area here, make it a car-free zone where I have green. It's like you do your little green treatment on the road so that no cars park here. They stop there. There's a stop line, a signal goes up in this location so that when cyclists come this way and go this way, they can go across in safety. I see that now MBAC is having these site visits or trails where you go out and ride different areas. So please, can we do one on the Major Taylor Trail so we can look at these issues? Thank you.
Something that we have been talking about we want to organize for this summer are more MBAC bike rides. We did one last summer, which was a lot of fun. And so we're looking at doing that again this year and trying to target like 4 rides for the summer, so combining 2 of the regions. So yeah, we'll be in touch for sure about this one. And I know we've talked, Peter, about this this kind of area, and so we're looking at improvements to the on-street portion of the Major Taylor Trail between 105th and 95th. And this particular area is one of those key areas that's tricky and that we're focusing on coming off the trail northbound and turning left onto Charles. So.
And when we had our ride, the ride that we did as that sort of site visit, we did a lot of the same things where we came up to places and we were like, it would be wonderful if you could go somewhere from here, but what do you do? Because we just hit a one-way street that hits a viaduct and no alternative for getting where you're going.
I think wayfinding is a big problem with cycling, just in general. If we hope to develop, good cyclotourism here for people that visit, we need that. Sure.
I was just kind of echoing some of what you were saying about it was kind of hard to get statements like on the floor here. Yeah. The meeting as a whole tends to be, it's an hour and a half total, and a lot of people that do come here take time off from work to actually attend that don't work for the government. And while it's great to hear so much from the MBAC reps, like I feel like a lot of people are hoping to hear more of like what's actually being done within the city side. Because, you know, if you look at the agenda, it's only like 20, 25 minutes that we're hearing from you guys. And I think we're hoping to hear more.
Okay.
Peter, the list that you mentioned, the punch list you said from dating back to 2016.
Right.
Have you?
Can you share that?
Email that, or did
Yes,
you send it?
email. I mean, we did this with Luann and Mike Anson.
Yeah,
from,
I understand.
and I guess
Believe
it
me,
didn't get passed.
I understand that it's not the first time. I
Yeah.
just wanted to say,
Yeah,
please
no,
send it
okay.
again.
Yeah.
Please send it again.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Just a quick question, Free Bikes for Kids. Are you looking for bicycles with 20-inch and smaller wheels?
We will be taking any bikes that come in, but we're trying to focus on 20-inch, 24-inch wheels, basically bikes for kids under the age of 13.
Okay.
That's the big need, but we'll take a lot of things.
Okay.
A lot of things we don't want. Thank you.
Yes.
Quick question, suggestion. People are scared to bike on the street because the 3,000-pound pieces of steel and glass are moving past them pretty quickly. Let's do this quickly. You have some places in the city where you share the sidewalk, bike lane, and walking. I understand the width concern that we talked about on the phone, but could some more of those shared sidewalks be painted? Stony Island,
Put me in the emergency room.
Stony Island, for example, for instance, not a lot of people walk down Stony Island. So could you? But
I mean, I think any discussion, and I mean, Dave is the real guy to talk to about this, but my thought is that any infrastructure needs to be context sensitive, right? Like you said, on Stony Island, there aren't as many pedestrians, and so a treatment that does include, you know, commingling of modes might be appropriate there. But it also depends on all the local context, depending on what community wants and depending on community needs. If we have people show up to a public meeting saying that what they would prefer is to bike on the sidewalk and pedestrians feeling that that's also safe, there are so many neighborhoods in Chicago that look nothing like what we see on the north side.
It's illegal.
And so it needs to be context sensitive. If something is demarcated and has enough width and the right treatment, something really robust and safe probably could be achieved. But I would say that it has to depend so much on the local area and very specific needs.
it may be illegal, but when I went to visit my neighboring alderman in the 7th Ward, Alderman Mitchell, I was fine biking down Jeffrey off the Lakefront Trail because you have a bus lane and people can't drive it. Okay, that felt comfortable-ish. But when I was coming back over home, taking 95th Street over to Stony Island back home, I was riding illegally on the sidewalk because I'm not riding on 95th Street because it's not, and I'm not afraid to ride. I'm going to ride over whatever you say is illegal or not. I can afford to pay for a ticket if you want to pull me over. Enough said. But if you build infrastructure and if you change laws so that it's flexible for different communities,
Yeah.
please.
Anything
So I'm lobbying for something
signed-
different that works.
Anything that's signed as a bike route is legal. So we wouldn't have to change a law. We would have to make sure that the facility was safe.
Okay.
And that you would have to have the right signs and the right markings, and everybody there has to know what's the right place to be.
Because I'm riding 95th Street down 73rd Street on Stony Island thinking about, man, 2 people died on the street in the last year.
Yeah.
Doing it legally.
Yeah.
And
We're
that-
trying to fix that. Hear you loud and clear.
That's because of Alderman stuff, as you know.
I was going to, I didn't know this was last week, so his office is closed, but I was going to say, hey, listen.
For more community discussion.
Yeah, right.
For more, right? Like the needs in one area are different from the needs in another area. And finding solutions for all of that to come together. So, I mean, is it impossible to do it? No. Is it the right thing? We don't know until you start looking, until you start having those conversations.
Thanks for hearing me.
Before we go, I can say one thing as a biker and a human person. I was hoping this meeting would cover, and maybe would cover like safety on the 606.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but like the past year, there's been like murders and stabbings and like all these things, and I can't not take the 606.
You know.
Yeah. Is this I don't know awareness that these things happen and we want it to be safe. And I know like cameras, but what are cameras gonna do, right? Like,
Yeah,
don't
well,
know how to.
and we also have to be aware of how it is, we need more police patrolling on the 606 to make sure that people feel safe at those later dates, at those later times, but that can also make some people feel very unsafe at certain times. Exactly. Well, lighting is a huge portion, but in the places where those most recent attacks happened are actually some of the...
It was like 12.
Exactly.
Was that a mentally unstable person? I don't know, when you ran down the steps, like, you know, like, and you went to the contact.
Yeah.
Right, I know, I was like, is it mentally unstable? Is it like?
I don't know. And because similar things to that don't happen on the 606 across the city in different places, they don't end up, there's not as much reason to write a story about it because mental health issues is a daily thing for hundreds of people. But my wife literally was biking on that stretch where the stabbing happened 30 minutes before it happened, and she came home just shocked, and she hasn't been up on the 606 since. So,